go. So last week, we looked at 2 Samuel 8. Or, I'm sorry, 1 Samuel 8. 1 Samuel 8, the Jews come to Samuel and they demand a king. Samuel's troubled by this, prays to God, and God says, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. And kind of wrap this whole thing around this idea that God's not enough for us, and that God's never been enough for us. And they kept asking God, or they kept asking Samuel, make us like the rest of the nations. We want to be like the rest of the world. We're God's chosen people. We're the holy people of God that God has called and God has created and God has set aside to establish His kingdom here on earth. And all we want is to be like everybody else. And, I made the joke, the good thing that we learned our lesson from that history and we didn't repeat it over and over and over again, because here we are in 2022 and all we want is to be like everybody else. We structure our churches the same way the rest of the world structures their businesses. Everything we do in church is the same way the rest of the world does everything. And we continue to ask for kings, and we continue to not be happy with the kings that we get. And everything that wraps around us, all of it boils down to the fact that God's not enough for us. And so Sunday, I'm back at the computer and I'm shutting everything down, and Aaron walks up, and Aaron's like, yeah, exactly, I know exactly what you're talking about today, free will. Now, usually on Sundays after church, I'm still kind of, my brain's still kind of going. I'm not really able to kind of have a coherent conversation for a good 30, 45 minutes. And I just remember thinking, like, how in the world did you get free will out of what I just said? And like I said, it just kind of left me. So then Thursday, we meet, and Thursday when we were meeting, I said to Aaron, I said, so what did you hear me say on Sunday? And he said, free will. Now, Sunday after church, when he said it, mind you, I had no idea what I had said, right? Once again, nothing was written, nothing was planned. And so, I had to go back, and by Thursday, I'd watched it a few times. And so on Thursday, when he said free will, I'm thinking, like, how in the world did you get free will out of anything I said today? Baffles my mind. Now, what baffles my mind isn't how he can be so wrong, because I said nothing to do with free will. What baffles my mind is, why did the Spirit have him hear that? It's not an instant I didn't say that. He's wrong about what I said. He heard what the Spirit needed him to hear in that message. So the question isn't, why was he hearing me wrong? The question was, why is that what he heard? So I've been wrestling with that. And this idea that goes back 2 to 3 weeks, when I sat up here and I asked the question, why isn't God enough for us? And it kind of startled me and jolted me, because I'd never said that before. I never realized that before. But once again, the answer to all the world's problems, why is the world the way it is? Why is there so much greed? Why is there so much corruption? Why is there so much hatred? Why is there so much division? The answer to all of the world's problems is boiled down to the fact that God's not enough for us. Right? We continue to try to solve the problems because we don't think that God is enough for us. We don't believe that God's actually going to show up and do anything. So we try to do it ourselves, and we just make everything worse. So then, taking all of that, Aaron hears free will. Because we always think that free will is this beautiful gift that we have. And our free will is the greatest thing that we have. And it's so wonderful that we have free will. But the reality of it is all the world's problems are come down to the fact that we have free will. We had free will in the garden. We've had free will ever since. And we are always choosing our will over God's will, and that's what free will is. Free will is the ability to choose God's will or our will. And we always choose ours. Because, I don't know about you, but I'm always right. Why wouldn't I follow my will? I've never been wrong before. Why would I pick today to start, right? Of course my will is right. God doesn't know what he's doing. God isn't actually going to show up. I think Andrew and I had this conversation a couple weeks ago. Because in my rational mind, there is no God. The thought that there's a God, the thought that God actually exists and he created it, and that thought, when you think about it rationally, is absurd. Of course there's no God. It doesn't make sense. But then when I look at my experience, and I look at how my life turned out, it doesn't make sense without a God. I can't exist without God. But at the same time, he can't exist. And he can't not exist. All at the same time in my brain. Once again, I'm not saying God's not real. My experiences have proven to me time and time again that God is real. He shows up in my life. He's blessed my life beyond measure. There's no way God isn't real. But when I actually start thinking about there being some God existing, I can't compute it. Doing research and study and all of that stuff doesn't make God real. What makes God real is the fact that he shows up. The fact that there's those times where I hear that voice in my head. I see that thing that I hadn't seen before, just comes so clear. The way the bees work, the way the leaves and the trees work, and the way the seasons, the way that there's order to everything tells me that it was created because nothing has that much order to it by accident. The way our bodies work and the way we have all these different systems in our body that are all separate and distinct different systems, but they all coordinate together and work to make my body work in a perfect harmony. And that if one of those systems gets out of whack, it throws off all the other systems. That's order. That's design. That's a creator. But then why isn't that enough for me? Why do I still think that I need to figure it out? I need to solve the problem. I need to conquer this. I need to fix it. I need to grow it. I need to build it. I need to do it. So then Tuesday, we have a leadership meeting. And we get to the end, and I said, does anybody have anything? Phil kind of drops his shoulders and drops his head and goes, well, I don't, but Karen does. And I said, oh, God, here we go, right? And then, so either when Phil reported back to Karen what I said, it didn't appease her, because then I got a text on Friday saying, hey, can we talk? And once again, of course, why wouldn't I? And so Karen and I it was only a 2 hour conversation. I mean, it's 2 hours and then 20 minutes of cake and popcorn, which is pretty good for us. But the question was, where are we going? What's the plan? And I know we've talked about this before, and maybe people aren't comfortable with it, but I said there isn't a plan. I have no idea where we're going. I don't have the answers anymore. Because all I know is that if I try to do it, it's not going to work. In 7 years, as the pastor of this church, yes, it's been 7 years, it's crazy to me, in 7 years, I've had a lot of plans. I've had a lot of ideas. I had a lot of solutions. I had a lot of things that we're going to do that's going to fix everything. And all of them failed. None of them worked. And in some ways, all I've done is made things worse because I got people to leave that we really liked, wanted to be here, and aren't here anymore because the things that I said were things that I was doing at the time. So when I tried to do things my way, not only did I fail, but I actually made things worse. And I was always trying to do things my way because I thought I had to be the one who fixed it. I was going to be the Savior. I had the solutions. Because God's not enough. God's not actually going to show up and save our church. But you're also lucky that He sent me to do it. And He's going to have me fix it all. Exactly. But yet, thought that was the answer. Thought that was going to be what happened. Because I didn't believe God was enough. I didn't believe that God was actually going to show up and do something here. We continue to look in our lives, and we continue to have problems in our lives, and we continue to look for different solutions and try to figure out the answer to the problem. Because we don't actually believe God's the answer to the problem. Because we continue to rely on our own free will. And maybe the answer to the problem is relinquishing our free will. Saying, you know what? I'm not making choices anymore. Now, once again, where are we going to go for dinner? I'm not going to wait for God to tell me where to go to dinner, right? It's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about physical decisions. Maybe we weren't supposed to have free will. Maybe in the garden, God gave us the ability to choose free will or to choose His will. And we chose free will. Because your will isn't enough for us. Because this serpent over here told me that there's more. The serpent over here told me that you're holding out on us. That there's knowledge that you're not giving us, and we want it. Because just being in your presence every day, walking in this garden with you every day, having you love on us every day, isn't enough for us. We want more. Anybody ever been there before? The house you have isn't enough. You need a bigger one. The car you have isn't enough. You need a nicer one. 4 wheels isn't enough. You need 2. Or 4 wheels is too many. I had too many wheels. I need less wheels. Yeah, you know. I mean, I like my 4 wheels and my doors and my walls and my roof. I feel safer that way. This job isn't enough for me. I need a better one. This family isn't enough for me. I need a new one. This church isn't good enough for me. I want a different one. It's never enough for us. We always want more. God wasn't enough for us. We wanted more. And as always, good thing we learned our history so that way we don't repeat it. Good thing we learned that lesson in the garden, and it was never repeated ever again because, you know, we've been teaching the story of Adam and Eve for how many years now, and we've all learned from it. We've stopped repeating that lesson. So when is God going to be enough for us? When are we going to be able to say, you know what? Maybe my will isn't the one I should be following. Maybe the ability for me to choose to do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it isn't a good thing. Maybe I need to just be still and know that He is God. He is going to guide me. He is going to direct me. He is going to provide for me. He is going to save me. He is going to resurrect me. He is going to build this. He is going to conquer. He is going to do those things. Now, He might use us to do it, but we aren't going to do it. It's not my plan. It's His plan. Psalm 46. The choir master of the sons according to the almost of a song. Or I have no idea what that means. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains may be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at the swelling, there is a river whose streams make glad of the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage and the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice and the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolation on the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fires. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted on the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Now, once again, he's not talking here that one day the mountains are literally going to be moved into the seas. He's saying, basically, how would you describe seeing mountains be moved into the sea, right? For me, he's describing chaos. There's chaos going on in the world. It's upside down. Things are going crazy. But the God of Jacob is going to be our fortress. The nations are going to rage. The kingdoms are going to be tottering. The kingdoms are about to fall. He utters his voice and the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. Come and behold the works of the Lord. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He destroys instruments of war and sets them on fire. Be still and know that I am God. Come, behold the works of the Lord, who has wrought desolations in the earth. He makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and cuts the spear in two. He burns the chariots with fire. Cease striving and know that I am God. Be still does not mean that we just sit down and wait for God to do it all. And that's why I like the version where it says, cease striving. Stop thinking that you got to figure it out. Stop chasing after it like you're going to be the one who fixes it. Just be still. And know that he is God. He's going to be exalted, not me. I'm not going to be the one who's looked at it and said, oh, look what Jimmy did. He fixed it. No, I didn't. He did. We can elect whoever we want, but that person isn't going to be exalted and say, oh, look, good thing Jim Hornbeck was elected president. He fixed everything. No, he didn't. We are not to be exalted. We are not to be lifted up. Why do we continue to lift each other up thinking that you're going to be the one, or I'm going to be the one, or she's going to be the one that fixes everything? I'm sorry, I love Phil, but Phil is not my fortress. The God of Jacob is my fortress. The God of Jacob will be the one who will be exalted. The God of Jacob is going to be the one who ends war. He's going to be the one that quiets the sea. He's going to be the one that restores order. He's going to be the one that stops the nations from raging. Not me. Not you. He. And he can't do it until we get out of the way. We can't get out of the way until we recognize that he's enough for us. I don't need my will. I don't need my will. My will has done nothing but get me in trouble. My will has done nothing but lead me down the wrong path. My will has done nothing but lead me to failure. All the things that I can look at in my life as my greatest successes were nothing that I did of my own. I literally went to the mall one day to buy a new pair of shoes and left with an engagement ring. Had no plan to marry Jessica at that time. Literally went to the mall to buy shoes. Next thing I know, I'm in a jewelry store buying a ring. Wasn't my doing. Trust me, I needed that, how much ever that was at that time. Wasn't my decision. But my greatest success. I didn't meet her. My ex-girlfriend's mom got me the job at Ruby Tuesday. Jessica came back to Ruby Tuesday after Ed lost out on a professorship at a college in Kansas because she quit her job because they were moving to Kansas. And when it fell through and he didn't get the job at the seminary in Kansas, she came back to Ruby Tuesday a week after I started. She fell in love with me. She chased me down. She's not here right now. And I can look back at all my life. All the things I succeeded at had nothing to do with me. Had nothing to do with my triumph. Because I failed. I failed at everything that I tried to do. But everything that he's had me do, anytime I've gotten my will out of the way, man, he shows up. He makes things happen. Why isn't that enough? Once again, I can't tell you your story. I can tell you my story. But I know it's the same story as your story. I know my story of marrying Jessica is similar to Jeff's story of marrying Diane. How is he good enough for her? Sorry, Jeff, you're not. I'm not good enough for Jessica. You're not good enough for Jessica. You're not good enough for Karen. You're not good enough for Lori. Yeah, God brought him into our life. And God said, this is the one. Some people, it took a couple tries. But we got it. That's not my doing. That's God's doing. Why isn't he enough for us? He's always provided a way. But we continue to try to push our will. Instead of just ceasing to strive and allowing him to be God. So people want to ask me, what's the plan for the church? What's the objective over the next couple of years? How are we going to keep the church open? By being still and knowing that he is God. By not striving after things, by not striving after a prison ministry or striving after a housing ministry or striving after a community garden. We're just going to be still. We're going to be faithful. We're going to love each other. And we're going to continue to support each other and encourage each other. And we're not going to continue to try to be like the rest of the world. We're going to stop being like the rest of the world. And we're going to start trying to be like God's chosen people. We're going to start trying to be different than the rest of the world. Because as people are getting exhausted by the world is exhausting. The political debate's exhausting. The violence in our world is exhausting. The wars in our world is exhausting. The prices in our world are exhausting. Everything going on in our world right now is exhausting. Good thing God is our refuge. Good thing God is our source of rest. Good thing we can be different. We don't have to be constantly exhausted by what's going on in the world out there. I have a friend of mine. He said that he's a progressive guy. He's a liberal, and he thinks that it's his job as a liberal pastor to, be getting recognized and getting people to convince that Jesus was a liberal. And so they make the arguments, and they post things about how, you can't say Jesus didn't pick sides. Jesus was always picking a side. And so, being me, just trying to be funny, I said, I was trying to figure out how I can say it in the most complicated and arrogant way I could, just because it's so funny to me to be that way. I said, Jesus and Christ both existed and exist in a dimension that doesn't include sides. Therefore, as those of us who've been called to follow him, our job is to join the dimension that doesn't include dualisms. And I thought that was funny. True, but funny. Because in the dimension of the kingdom of God, once again, it's not a physical kingdom that's going to be one day. It's a different way of existing. That's why I say the word dimension, because it's a different existence. There's the worldly dimension which we exist, and then there's the spiritual dimension, which is a different way. And in that spiritual dimension, there isn't sides. There's nothing to debate. It's, oh, you see it that way. I see it different. It's not you're on that side and I'm on this side. There are no sides in that dimension. Why isn't that enough for us? Why do we need to continue to exist in sides and exist on sides? Why can't we just cease striving? Just be still and know that he's going to be exalted. So how do we change the world? By doing nothing. By allowing him to do it. And he might do it through us, which is a complicated thing, because often we say, we'll do nothing, but then God's doing it through me. Because everybody who's ever tried to do anything thought God was doing it through them. That's a hard thing to kind of balance on. Because a lot of times I thought I was following God's will. And I might have started out following God's will. I might have started out with a great intention, but was led astray. So free will. We have the free will to decide that I'm giving up my free will. I cease striving. I can't do it. Surrendering to God's will. And I don't even like that word surrender, submit. I hate those words. I don't know what they mean. And we use them all the time. Obey, surrender, submit. That's terrible language. I don't surrender to God. God's not some victor that I need to surrender to. He's not some overlord that I need to submit to. He's not some dictator that I need to obey. I don't know how to talk about it. He's not angry. He doesn't need to be appeased. He needs to be trusted. He needs to be believed in. He needs to be, I don't know how to say it. I'll work on that this week. But either way, loved. I like that one too. Anyway, the moral of the story is to cease striving and know that he is God. And if we can do that, we'll recognize that he's enough for us. He always has been enough for us. He always will be enough for us. When are we going to see it? When are we going to believe it? When are we going to trust in it? It's a ridiculous thing to say, God's not enough for us. But it's true.